Alright, you guys, welcome to the first Game Shakers video blog. This is Sky Whale, the hour-long pilot. Clearly it wasn't an hour when I watched it because it was on iTunes. Anyways, a few other announcements I wanted to quickly make. I wanted to quickly announce that I did do reaction videos to the other Hunger Games trailers, but I was never able to get them off the ground. And the third one, the one about spoilers, the one about them teasing Prim's death, on spoilers, I did that one in two parts, because I watched it once in the first part, and then watched it the second time in the other part, and gave more of my thoughts, even though I still avoided the spoilers. And yeah, I also did one on the Star Wars trailer. That never got off the ground either. The Ice Bucket Challenge thing, that never really took off either. So that, I guess I'll try again next year, depending on how things go when it comes back in August and the time comes for that. In addition to that, the last thing, I have another big project I have coming up. Nickelodeon month, which will be this summer. One of those 3 months, June, July, or August. I'm going to do all of the Nickelodeon movies. Every single one. And I may do some of the TV movies too, because they technically count as Nickelodeon movies. Primarily, though, the main focus is just the theatrically released films. A video for each one. So, anyways, let's talk about Sky Whale, the first episode of Game Shakers. This show's very hit and miss. And by hit and miss, but so far, it's very hit and miss. And by hit and miss, I mean mostly miss. Because it's just, Dan Schneider has this uncanny ability to continuously use up every one of his tropes from his other shows. Continue to use them. And you know, his shows also have no real logical, believable world that they exist in. Any of his shows at all. iCarly and Victorious are probably the closest to an actual existing world. In their first, iCarly in its first 3 seasons, and Victorious in its first season. Because after that, they went downhill very quickly. And it was very noticeable. And, you know, something I've noticed is his jokes can hit bullseyes. Like, there were a few jokes in Sam and Cat that hit bullseye. That doesn't excuse for the rest of the show, though, which was pretty much crap for the whole way through. It's the worst show the Nickelodeon has ever done. The worst show Dan Schneider has ever done. And you think about the fact is how Amanda's show, each skit existed in a world that wasn't reality. So you could believe it, you could buy it, and it worked because of it. Here, all these, and I realize what he's trying to do. He's creating fantasies for fans who want to escape real world. Things that they wish they could do, that they want to do. But at the same time, to continue to present these fantasies to them that just are very unrealistic or have a very slim chance of happening is unrealistic. And I've been watching. I watched all of his I watched all of Pie Guy Rule's Bottom of the Bakery videos in which he talked about Dan Schneider episodes. This is the only one I haven't watched yet, because I wanted to watch the show itself and then share my thoughts before I found out what Pie Guy Rules thought. There were moments, the many moments of the show where I did laugh. Because much like with Thundermans and Haunted Hathaways, I was entertained by just how insane and crazy many of the things in this show were. Or some of the things in the show were. And I gotta say that it's nowhere near that level. Most of the laughs from the show came from Kel Mitchell. Because Kel Mitchell carries the material without. He's able to do his own thing, and it's able to be funny and able to be really entertaining. And so there's no failure to launch in that because has his idea of what he wants to get out of his character, and he's gonna do that. He's gonna run with it. And Dan Schneider probably gave him free reign to do so, which is actually pretty smart because Cal Mitchell, he's been doing this a long time. He struck gold in the past, so he's striking gold here again now. It looks to be. Anyways, the concept of the show. These two girls, very polar opposites. Basically, they're Carly and Sam ripoffs. Shameless ripoffs at that. And they're decent enough actresses. They perform well enough. Their close friend in the class, the blonde boy who laughs at practically everything. He's kind of a demented version of Gibby. And just you wonder what is going on in this kid's head. Does he not? Is he have absolutely no connection to reality whatsoever? That he cannot focus. He cannot think. I'm hoping his performances get better. He's probably going to be set up as a love interest for one of the girls. Oh, Benjamin Flores. He had good moments in the show too. Benjamin Flores Jr., or Little Peanut, as his rap name is. He had good moments in the show too, and he was enjoyable on Haunted Hathaways. So I expect him to be enjoyable in this too. So also the fact is, Dan Schneider, aside from reusing the same tropes again and again, much like Adam Sandler, he doesn't quite understand who he's marketing to, or who his audience is supposed to be, rather. I mean, granted, Nickelodeon is a kids network, which means the shows are aimed for kids. But the fact is, people who wrote for shows in the past for Nickelodeon, they didn't write shows that were just primarily for kids. Or that wasn't their intention. They didn't write for kids, they didn't write for adults. They just wrote a show. They wrote a show, they had a concept, they tried to write it as smart as possible, and it turned out that as entertaining and colorful and bright and fun as that show was as a kid, it's still fun as an adult. Something like All That or Kenan and Kel. They were bright and energetic as when I was a kid, and I can appreciate how smart they are in their own rights now, watching them as an adult. I'm 24 years old, and I wish that so many of the writers of live-action kid shows today would think about that, take that into account. And I know that I'm able to enjoy something like the Thundermans and the Haunted Hathaways, even though I'm not clearly the intended target audience for those shows, because I kind of get it with those shows. And they do have a smartness to them that I feel is not relevant in many, and not there in many of Dan Schneider's shows. And I really wish it was, because he could produce us with some great stuff. There's a point in the episode where, and this was bizarre, Benjamin Flores Jr.'s character, he's jumping up and down on a trampoline, and he's, and he does that, trampoline, he does that. He seems to be spoofing both, and this is bizarre, he's spoofing both the Nutty Professor and Pixels at the same time. That's quite the combo to mesh together. A movie like the 1996's remake of the Nutty Professor and this year's Pixels. Pixels, I think, has started this year's Good Burger. This generation's Good Burger. In the sense that it's clearly not meant for anybody except for who it was aimed for. Which, yeah, the audience the audience Adam Sandler aimed for was not the audience it should have been directed to. And he actually ended up, his company was foolish to sell the movie as something it clearly wasn't. But anyway, that's a discussion for another time on Pixels. Pixels is definitely not a terrible movie. It's not a good movie. Certainly not a good movie. But at the same time, it has a visual quality to it that, like, you can appreciate. And you can almost appreciate what it could have been. You pity what it could have been. And, you know, it's the fact that Chris Columbus was the director, but clearly he had no final say in anything that happened in the movie. That is the biggest shame of all. Yeah, so the funniest moments in the episode, because of how sporadic and over the top they are, come from Cal Mitchell. We have the central characters. The background characters. Why can't they write a smart adult in these shows? I don't understand. Would it really be so friggin' hard to write a smart character? You have the two bodyguards. One is, yes, somebody who went to business school, which did provide for a funny gag, but just, he's a complete moron, an idiot. And then there's the other one who's just a loud maniac. And do they not screen this stuff before they decide to put it on Nickelodeon? And even then, Dan Schneider's kind of shameless in his promotions too. He has executive producer Dan Schneider in the beginning of the opening credits of the show, and then he has executive producer Dan Schneider at the end of the show, right before the end credit. Pick one. Don't continue to... That's what your Schneider's Bakery logo is for. To assess to us, this is a Schneider's Bakery show. This is my show. But the fact is, you got to consider your audience. That's what I really feel. And, you know, you got the girl who's pretty much one of them's named Babe. I don't have the names right now. I'll get them as time goes, as I'm continuing to watch this show. You have one... You have the girl who's like Sam. Her cookie is taken by a squirrel out the window of the classroom. She climbs into the tree, she climbs out the window, she climbs onto the tree, and she falls off trying to get the cookie back from the squirrel. Is the cookie really so friggin' important that you have to go out the window to the tree and risk your life for it? And then we have this character who is a Carly ripoff. She's a neurotic, she's a smarty, and she's continuing to they decide to create an app. And, you know, I saw the beginning of Pie Guy Rules review where he says, doesn't show how they made the app. That part is completely glossed over. Now, I'll give them this, that this is not supposed to be a show about how this stuff is actually created. It's just rather about the kids who create this stuff. I'm going to wrap up in a couple of minutes. And, yeah, I kind of got that, and I kind of moved on from that. Although, and then you have this moment where, like, they blow up the Carly girl's grandfather, trying to test a science project involving, like, chasing a metal. There's a funny gag there. I'm not getting it. And, you know, I think of the funny gags we got in other Dan Schneider shows, like in Sam and Cat, which is an abysmal show. I can't emphasize that enough. They had a funny gag in one episode where they're watching their favorite show, and Sam points out to Cat, they can't use pear products on TV, so they got to replace them with bananas instead. The fact that, like, yeah, they replace Apple products on Dan Schneider's shows with pears instead. And that's an in-joke to that. That's pretty funny. That was probably the funniest joke, without a doubt, throughout Sam and Cat. And those jokes, they didn't come very often, and it was awful. It was just awful. Yeah, so the show's not up to a great start, much like Henry Danger, which I'll get into that eventually too, because I'm going to do a Henry Danger. But I'm hoping for improvements. And then, to go off topic here, as I'm concluding this video, I'm not quite certain about when this is going to happen, but I'm thinking I'm going to visit Maybe I'll go to Bella and the Bulldogs and visit that too. I also want to do video blogs on this. I'm going to do one show at a time, though, for the record. I'm not doing all the shows at once. Doug and Rob Walker, they want to do all the shows at once. Or all the different things at once. That's their prerogative. Me, I'm going to stick to one thing at a time because it's easier for me that way. Except I'm going to be cranking this out far more frequently than they do their products. No disrespect to them at all. I love them. And I love their stuff. And I also want to I'm going to catch up on what Scott Fellows has been up to since Declassified. So, also, look for video blogs on Big Time Rush and 100 Things to Do Before High School. Because we're going to see how those shows turn out, the kind of quality they produce. That's it for this one, you guys. I'll catch you guys on the flip side. See you at the next one.